All right, folks, it is the top of the hour, so we will get started. So a very good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're joining us from, and welcome and thank you for joining us. This is the State of .NET webinar. I know a lot of folks are excited about this. We all kind of took in what .NET Conf had to offer last week, a lot of updates across the entire ecosystem. So we have all had a week to kind of digest it all, and I think we can break it down as to what exactly all of this means for developers across a variety of technology stacks. So that's what we're going to do today. It's going to be a lot of stuff over an hour, hopefully a lot of fun. So let's begin. We are your friendly neighborhood developer advocates. I am Sam Basu, and with me I have.
I'm Ed Charbonneau, and Sam and I are both Microsoft MVPs as well, so we are close, and this is all near and dear to our hearts.
Absolutely. So what you see there is our social handles, so you know how to get hold of us. You only see the two of us though, but we do have a lot of engineers and product owners with us on the call. So this is in your hour. Ask away questions, whatever doubts you might have, we are here to help. So we're going to look into all things .NET and .NET 5 and what can we do to help. All right, so let's start. Before we do that though, just a quick point out, this has been a difficult year, so we all hope that you and your families are staying safe. You're trying to be productive, so please take care of yourself. And if throughout the webinar you have to run or something goes on with your network, don't worry, this is all being recorded in high def, and we will push this out to YouTube as soon as we can. And also there is a Q&A panel on your in your webinar dashboard, so you can ask us questions, which we would love to read out. We probably won't be able to answer all of it, but we'll try to answer as many of it in written text as we can, and then we'll try to read out the ones that are important to address to everybody. If you do want to leave a breadcrumb trail, use the hashtag #HeyTelerik on Twitter, so we can follow up. All right. So let's talk about .NET. Let's talk about how things are evolving. It's a modern ecosystem, as we all know. Some of these are slides from Microsoft that you may have seen before. Again, .NET has evolved a lot. It's not just your old school .NET. It's the framework on top of which we build a lot of different types of apps, and the tools of our trade have come a long way. This was .NET as of before last week, and we had .NET Framework, we had .NET Core, and we had Mono, BCLs, and runtimes. But starting middle of next week or last week, we had .NET 5. So that, you all know, this is a reunification effort. It's kind of trying to not have a fragmented .NET. It's your single runtime moving forward. This is going to get all of the investments and all of the innovations moving forward, because it is taking the best of .NET Core and Mono, and all of your tools are evolving as well. So I wanted to ask Ed, how did you feel about all of this?
I'm really enjoying it, Sam, because that slide you have up right now really hits home with me, because I like to hit different aspects of this ecosystem. So I do mainly web development, but I really enjoy getting to AI and gaming, and I know you do mobile. So this gives us a chance to reuse our skills across so many different platforms, and it's been a lot of fun the last couple months testing out all the new bits.
Absolutely. So we're going to talk about kind of what is our bread and butter. Like for me, it's desktop and mobile, and for Ed, it's web. But just keep in mind, like cloud native and AI and IoT, these are things very welcome on .NET 5. So as you all know, this is all open source, right? Microsoft is not kidding when they say they are big into open source, and GitHub speaks volumes to it. So again, there is no barrier to entry. Everything is open source that you see in .NET 5, all of the tooling. So go get the bits and play around with it, give them feedback. That's kind of what they're after. A few quick updates. Again, we don't want to kind of recap all the things that went into .NET Conf, but just the things that really matter to us. So we have C# 9 come out. We have F# 5 for all the 5 people that are using it. I'm kidding. Use whatever languages that you want. It's all welcome. And Visual Studio gets a lot of updates. VS on Windows gets, I think, 16.8 is the GA version, and for Mac, which is where I'm at, it's 8.8. So all of those things are GA, and pretty much everything we are going to talk about, those are the latest bits. And Ed, what I really liked are some of the things that they put on the side, like things like GitHub code spaces. and being able to use GitHub Actions all inside of Visual Studio. So if you're working in a team, if you have CI/CD pipelines, it's easier for you to get through.
Yeah, they've reworked all of the Visual Studio Git interactions. So you've got a completely new control panel. So you can do all that stuff through a GUI. There's a nice graph that's displayed inside of Visual Studio. So if you're using Visual Studio Code is great as well. But if you're using Visual Studio, there's a lot of new features in there that shipped along with .NET 5 that help with all of your Git management stuff.
Absolutely, yeah. It's really gotten quite a bit in terms of networking and management of your code, not just writing it. And what I'm bringing out here is my favorite feature of C#9, because like who does not like records, right? We don't have to write all this boilerplate code anymore. If you're writing a class, like all of the public methods, that can all be done, and it's immutable. It's reference, it's value types versus reference types, and you can have an init, and so it doesn't change over time. So yes, Ed, I mean, I like records. Do you?
I like it, and I think the F# folks are laughing right now, going, "Yeah, we already had that, guys."
Yes, well, we all learn from each other and we take the best of each language, right? So anyways, C#9 and F#5 are here for you to use. Okay, now you don't have to do all of this alone, right? We are here to help. We are your partners, your trusted partners when it comes to UI, components, and frameworks. Anything really on top of .NET, we have you covered. We'll talk about all things web, mobile, and desktop today. Really, we are talking all across .NET 5, and everything we have works with .NET 5. That's how quick we are to make sure it's you have daisy or support for anything you're doing with .NET 5. So you obviously know that we make tools for .NET Framework, which isn't going away anywhere. .NET Core is going to be fine, and .NET 5 is here. So we have UI for all of those frameworks, and here we are here to support you. You know about our support. We also have like the full plethora of software development. It's not just a silo, right? You need reporting, you need testing and debugging, and a variety of things in your software lifecycle. So we are here to help you. And one thing I do want to kind of bring up here, something we don't talk about a lot, something that's very important to us as a company. It's all about people. We are making software, the humans are making it, and it is for all of you. So inclusivity is big for us. We care about IND, we care about social responsibilities, and we try to make software. We think about accessibility. So this is for everybody. We are in it to help make you more successful. Okay. So with that, I know there's a lot going on. So this is going to be a little interactive. We want you to have a couple of chances where you can respond to a few questions. We have a few polls. So this one is about .NET 5, which we're going to ask you, where are you in your journey? Do you want to jump on right now? And we're going to ask you a few questions as we go along that pertains to what we're talking about. So we'll give you like maybe 5 seconds more to respond to this.
And Sam, we got a good question from a good old friend of ours, actually, Chad Green in the audience asks, should companies upgrade to .NET 5 with the current release, or should they wait until .NET 6, which will be LTS?
Yeah, that is a great question. And by the way, we are also showing you the poll results, since many of you ask about where is everybody else. So this kind of shows you, and it's a mixed bag. I mean, a lot of folks want to jump onto .NET 5 right away. That's great. You get all the benefits. If you want to wait, that's fine too. So Scott Hunter and those folks at Microsoft, they talked about all the things that are lined up for the .NET lifecycle. Every event release, every alternate release is going to be LTS. So right now, .NET Core 3.1 is LTS. .NET 5 is not, because it's a lot of change, and again, it is stable. So this comes down to a matter of like enterprise kind of readiness and where you want to jump on board. If you are jumping on an LTS version, it's true that you don't have to upgrade every year, and you can wait until the next LTS version. But the reality is, with .NET 5, and I mean, this started with like .NET Core, you're looking at single file apps, you're looking at self-contained apps. So the version of .NET really does not matter all that much. If you think you have the benefits right now that .NET 5 can bring to the table in terms of APIs, side-by-side .NET, then go for it. But if you would like the reliability of an LTS, then you have to wait until .NET 6. But to me, since .NET is so siloed and you can ship it with your app, it doesn't really matter all that much.
Yeah, and I think just to add to that real quick, just because it's not LTS or long-term support doesn't mean that you don't have support. It just means that you may be asked to upgrade to receive support. So you might need to go from .NET 5 to .NET 5.1 or 2 or something if and when that comes out. So it doesn't mean that you're left out in the cold. It just means that you might be asked for a little bit of effort on your part before support kicks back in.
Absolutely. Okay, so we have had 10 minutes. I know there's a ton of content we want to cover, so why don't we start with our resident web expert, and Ed, take it away for all things web.
All right, Sam. Let's see if I can grab this screen share back from you. Okay, so let's talk about the state of all things ASP.NET. This is a pretty wide array of things we'll get into in just a minute here. But first, I just want to give a quick overview of where we were and where we're going. ASP.NET Core, over its history, has been about a release every year for ASP.NET Core, and this differs from full framework, where we haven't seen as much activity in recent years. And as we hit .NET Core 3.1, and that kind of coincides with full framework 4.8. 4.8 is going to stay in its current shape and form. There's not going to be any new releases of full framework. So our .NET Core history is going to keep moving forward with new releases with our .NET 5 and .NET 6 in the future. And full framework is going to be superseded by these new releases. A little bit of a breakdown between those two, ASP.NET and ASP.NET Core. With ASP.NET, you have your full framework, but it is Windows only. However, it does offer some serious stability because it's been around for so long and it has been supported for 18 or more years, and Microsoft continues to support that. With ASP.NET Core, you've got cross-platform, so you can run .NET Core anywhere. It's open source, very performant. We'll talk a little bit more about performance as we go along here. It's got a lot of standards baked in, dependency injection across all of the different application types that you can build with this, improved middleware. It's built for modern applications with microservices and some really future-proof things that you're going to be seeing here in just a moment. ASP.NET Core in .NET 5. We're talking about using C#9, as Sam talked about a little bit earlier. We have record types. We'll talk a little bit more about that. It's amazingly fast. Talking 7 million requests per second with ASP.NET Web API. Swagger is built in by default. I'll show a demo of what Swagger is. We have gRPC support, Microsoft Tie, lots of Blazor improvements in .NET 5 as well. So you're probably wondering what's new in your framework that's within the ASP.NET ecosystem, and that's a pretty big ecosystem now that .NET 5 has shipped. So a lot of things that I've been mentioning, we have SignalR, gRPC, Project Tie, microservices, all these things have just kind of exploded into .NET 5 or ASP.NET in .NET 5. So let's kind of break down a little bit of what some of those new updates are. Microsoft Identity got some updates. You can now use Azure Active Directory authentication with Microsoft Identity, and that adds support for Microsoft Graph, which is really cool. Web API. So Web API has gotten significant updates. Those new C#9 record types are fully supported with Web API. The OpenAI API and Swagger is on by default. Microservices are enabled with that Project Tie. There's a lot of good templates and things that are coming out of that. And these are fully capable of using all of our Kendo UI products. So whether you're still writing jQuery or you're building Angular applications, React applications on the front end, and powering that with Web API, you can use Kendo UI for all of your apps, make them look great and responsive, and build those nice data-rich applications you're used to building. We have tons and tons of components in that Kendo UI ecosystem. There's over 70 plus components with media players and charts and graphs and data grids. So make sure you check those out. Model View Controller is still a big part of .NET 5 or ASP.NET 5. We have new model binding with date and time over UTC, which is a huge deal. It sounds like such a trivial update, but this solves a lot of headaches with translating UTC times from JavaScript over to your .NET side of your application. So big win there. Model binding again with C#9 record types. And then our Telerik UI for MVC and Telerik UI for ASP.NET Core products are compatible with the latest versions of .NET as well. And with that compatibility brings not only our Razor View helpers or HTML helpers, but our tag helpers as well. So tag helpers are a big part of .NET Core, and those are fully supported by the Telerik UI for ASP.NET Core. Razor Pages is another way of writing your ASP.NET applications. This is a little bit more of a modern approach. It gives you all of the things that you love about ASP.NET without the added complexity of the MVC pattern. So this is a more vertical slice type of an architecture. And again, you've got those HTML and tag helpers available and all of the support from the Telerik UI for ASP.NET Core as well. gRPC is now part of ASP.NET. So you have file new project templates with gRPC. This is a new way of writing your applications and allowing you to do remote procedure call on your server. This supersedes the HTTP requests. So this is a modern way of writing your applications with speed and performance in mind. So you can replace those HTTP calls with gRPC and talk directly with your server. There's the protobuf definition types that are fully supported by .NET now. So those protobuf definition types are really interesting because they're actually understood by the .NET compiler and do code generation for you. So we'll show a demo of that in just a moment. I'm going to show a demo of SignalR as well. So SignalR got some updates in .NET 5. It now has a Blazor client for SignalR, so we don't need to rely on any JavaScript to build our SignalR applications on the web front end, which is really nice. Also in ASP.NET 5, they've added a SignalR parallel hub invocation. So again, we're looking at speed increases on the latest versions of .NET. So this helps us spin up our SignalR hubs in a parallel fashion, makes that startup experience a lot quicker. If you're not familiar with SignalR, this gives us real-time WebSocket interaction with our applications and our backend. So we can have a push-pull type of a pattern here with our applications. We can do things like build real-time chat applications, accept updates from our server right in our application and push data into the app and update the display without any user interaction. It's also very quickly scalable with Azure. So there's an Azure SignalR service that you can enable literally with just a couple lines of code. You can have your application sending all of your WebSocket traffic through Azure and scale everything up extremely quick. And this all works with our Telerik Blazor, Telerik UI for Blazor and Telerik web components. So I'm going to show a demo of that momentarily too.
While you're pulling that up, Ed, and you know I'm a big fan of SignalR, all of our UI supports it. I'm a big fan, but I'm going to combine a couple of questions here. Sarosh was asking about like the strategies, like when do you do Web API versus gRPC and SignalR?
So the web, classic HTTP type of web API is built for, human readability, kind of ease of use to get up and running. There's no compiler necessary on the JavaScript side of things to talk to a web endpoint. gRPC, on the other hand, is built for speed. So there's some compiler tricks that are necessary to kind of consume those protobuf definitions. There's a lot of tooling that's built into .NET to make this a very productive experience. And then you're sending binary traffic back and forth between your client and your server. So there's a lot of efficiencies there that you don't get with HTTP. When you're talking about SignalR, you want real-time connections. Now, the gRPC stuff can do some of this as well, but there's kind of a streaming protocol that you need to use. It's not quite the same as the SignalR connection, where you're kind of pushing and pulling traffic with multiple connected clients. So there's some similarities, but they don't exactly cross over. So it depends on what type of app you're building and what type of efficiencies you're looking for that you might choose one technology over the other. If you're building a client-side application with JavaScript, maybe the HTTP and Web API type of a build is still a good choice. If you're using Blazor, there's a lot of really interesting tooling developing around gRPC that you might want to look at. If you're doing something that's highly interactive with multiple clients talking to one another through like a chat service or some type of a game, maybe SignalR is something that you want to look at. It's a great question.
No, yeah, well said. And I think in a way you answered a couple more questions, because we had questions about like, should I go with straight up Web API, which is super fast, by the way, with ASP.NET Core on .NET 5, and then my front end be JavaScript? So yes, you can. I mean, that's where all the spa applications belong, but then you have Blazor. So I'll let you show Blazor. Awesome.
Yep, so I see some questions coming in as well, and we're talking about, does Blazor replace JavaScript? In my opinion, it can almost completely replace JavaScript. I'll show you a good demo of that in a few minutes. It doesn't mean that JavaScript is obsolete. You can still build wonderful applications with JavaScript. JavaScript is also very highly performant. So if you have something that's got a lot of redrawing of things on the screen, it's a really good platform still for doing web development. So let's talk a little bit about Blazor WebAssembly. It's .NET in the browser. So up until ASP.NET 3.2, this was actually running the mono runtime in the browser. Now with .NET 5, we're running the CoreFX base class library. So this is that one .NET that we've been talking about. So we have a brand new .NET framework running in the browser now with .NET 5. It's using web standard technology, so there's no plugin to install. This isn't Flash all over again, even though a lot of you still love your Flash. This isn't the same type of thing. Everything's rendered client-side. It's a single-page application model, so we've got routing and everything built in on the client side like you'd expect from React or Angular. The bonuses here, it's a very low learning curve for .NET developers. I'm going to show a lot of different examples in just a moment, and you'll see that it's mainly .NET code that you're looking at, whether you're on the front end or the back end, and it leaves some opportunities for code sharing between the client and the server as well. And then we totally support Blazor with the Telerik UI for Blazor, and all these scenarios apply with SignalR, gRPC, all the above. They all work with Telerik UI for Blazor because it's a front-end concern, and we can do a lot of interactive and kind of like mashup experiences with Blazor WebAssembly. It's really cool stuff. Blazor Server is also a nice opportunity to use Blazor if you want to not worry about that .NET runtime in the browser and just run everything on the server. It's a very fast and fluid experience for your users. Your users are none the wiser. They log into your application, it immediately boots up. The only trade-off here is that you have to have a client that's connected at all times because it's using WebSocket technology. but it's really great for line of business applications. And you can use those SignalR technologies and things even on the server side. And there's not really a lot of code differences between the client and server technology that you'll find. So .NET 5, what's new with Blazor? One thing is it's extremely fast. So there's been some performance improvements in .NET 5 that you're going to really enjoy. Core FX, again, replaces mono, which is giving us a 30% speed boost in .NET 5. Serialization has gotten 2 times faster. So if you're sending JSON across the wire, that's going to help you tremendously. Rendering is also getting a big boost in .NET 5. So Blazor just rendering on the screen is 2 to 4 times faster depending on what your scenarios are. Just some of the features that have been added, CSS isolation, if you're looking to isolate the look and feel of a component so it can't be accidentally overridden by other CSS in the system. That's a nice feature to have. Component virtualization is built in to the framework. So if you have large lists of things you need to display on the screen, virtualization is baked into Blazor now. JavaScript isolation is really nice. So this removes the need to write those script tags and add things that have JavaScript support in the head of your document. They can automatically do this through JavaScript modules. So this is a great feature to have. Debugging's improved, identity's improved. WebAssembly has pre-rendering now, so it's a lot more instantaneous as the boot up is right there when you navigate to a page. So you don't have to worry about those loading screens anymore. And speaking of loading, we can lazy load assemblies as well. So we can do those on a per component basis. So we can cut down on the amount of traffic that's sent across the wire on boot up. So I'm going to demo a few things. I have a line of business app. I have some gRPC demos. We'll try to get through these with the few minutes I've got left here. Let's start out with a SignalR client. So if you haven't seen SignalR before, it is an amazing technology for doing real-time communication in both directions between your client and server and multiple clients. So I've got a really simple chat app that I built in just a few minutes, really. There was a tutorial right on docs.microsoft.com. So I took advantage of that and built this demo chat app. I've made a slight modification here to where I can show the data with this SignalR application. So Sam, you and I are going to have a chat conversation here. I've got 2 instances of my Blazor chat application up here, and I'm just going to say hello here. You'll see that both screens update at the same time. So I've got this message sent and received on both clients, and I can send a message back, and you'll see both screens are updating with this this message here. Now the display is actually a Telerik UI for Blazor Data Grid, and it's able to do that through some really simple code. So I have a SignalR hub on the server that basically echoes back anything a connected client says. So when we're chatting, the server's taking that message and it's just repeating it back to all the clients that are connected to that hub. So the code on the server is very simple. We can actually take a look at it real quick. That is really it. It's 1 line of code. It just takes that message, repeats it back to literally all of the connected clients. And on the client itself, we have our input form, our button click that sends the message to the SignalR hub, and then our Telerik data grid that binds to the messages. The nice little piece of magic in here that makes all of this display so quickly is that data grid has an observable collection built in. So internally inside of that data grid, it's doing an iProperty notification change, and it alerts the data grid that a message has been received, and it re-renders the data in the grid. So you don't have to do anything other than assign the data grid an observable collection, and it'll take care of the rest for you. So the rest of it is just consuming that message that comes in and appending it to a .NET list or collection of objects that is the observable collection. So we add that new message that we received when the server receives an update, and it will just populate inside of that Telerik data grid for us. So really simple, including the markup, it's like 60 lines of code. So this is pretty amazing stuff to be able to do with such a simple bit of code.
Yeah, and I think the good thing is I've played a lot with SignalR in the past. Like the APIs have not changed a whole lot between Blazor and JavaScript. And before you switch topics, just quickly answer a question Heinz was asking about, because if you put SignalR in a web form, then you run into issues like which server is holding on to all of the clients. It's all in memory. You can do a Redis backplane, or you can write to SQL Server. That's up to you, and they don't hold your hands back. And you can obviously go to the cloud, and Azure SignalR service will do exactly that. It's a hosted SignalR solution.
Right. Let's jump over to gRPC now. So we talked about gRPC. We've got the familiar Hello World app that you see with Blazor, except a lot's changed on how it's handling things like button clicks and fetching data. So this counter, when I click start, is going to incrementally count up because it's receiving a data stream from our gRPC server. So I'll go ahead and stop that. We'll switch over to our fetch data, and notice how fast that was. We immediately get our weather forecast displayed here. And this is binding data it received from a gRPC server in a Telerik UI for Blazor Data Grid. So that's pretty cool. Let's go look at some of the code that made that happen. On our counter click scenario, we've got a response stream. This is something that's not as easy to do with an HTTP and JSON type of a response. So this is using gRPC, and we can start a connection and wait for a cancellation token, and it's going to receive that response stream. As the server keeps sending data back, it will go ahead and append the counts that it receives right here in the browser. So let's go over to the weather display that we just had, the fetch data component that we're used to seeing.
And before you do that, Ed, just a quick point. Neil Broomfield was asking something that's true for a lot of Blazor developers. Like when you look at the Razor markup, do you have to put your code in the same file? And the answer is no, you don't have to. It's a convention driven. You just do a .cs file and it knows how to pick up. It's a partial class. This way, I feel like you end up with a lot more like spaghetti code. So if and when you want.
No, it's an excellent point. When you're doing demos like this and there are only 30 lines of code, it's easy to throw everything in one file and put it on the screen for everybody to see. When you're building a real world application and it's hundreds of lines of code and markup, it really benefits you to put those in separate files, and you can easily do that. All you do is assign a partial class with the same name as the component, and compiler magic takes care of the rest. So on our fetch data component, we're used to seeing this with an HTTP call that brings in some data from the server as a JSON string and serializes that back into some .NET class types. What's really interesting here is we're using the gRPC proto files to create some of this code. So in this fetch data, it's still fairly simple. We're going to go out and new up a weather forecast client and then await a call to that gRPC part of our server. So we can attach to gRPC here, but we're assigning a list of weather forecasts to that collection. and that's being displayed in our Telerik data grid. So what I found interesting about this demo is this weather forecast object. We go take a look at that. The weather forecast object itself, it's only using this date time property that is doing some formatting for us, and this temperature in Fahrenheit that is also just displaying some format for us. These are just convenience methods here, or convenience properties that are just giving us some rough translations of Fahrenheit to Celsius. So where are the rest of the properties for this weather forecast object? If I control click on this, let's see if we can get this.
Ed, I would need you to
display here.
I mean, there are a lot of questions on the desktop and other side of .NET. So how about you take like 3 to 4 minutes more, try to wrap up.
Okay, yeah, that's what I've got on my watch here. We've got a bunch of generated code that has our weather forecast object. It's all compiler magic here, so you're not gonna really understand what all of this is. So let's see where that's coming from. If I go over to my solution here, I've got some proto files. So I've got a weather.proto file. And in here, you'll see the weather forecast with the rest of the properties that are built into it. So you can see our timestamp, our temperature in Celsius, and our summary. So what's happening here is the .NET, the compiler is taking this weather forecast proto definition and compiling it into a .NET class for us. So we get our weather forecast class, and then we can just tack on our convenience methods and properties, adding that date time that's formatted and our temperature in Fahrenheit. And that's where the temperature in Celsius comes from. You can see if I zoom in here, it actually has a weather forecast temperature in Celsius property that's an integer, and it built that from that proto file that was included in the solution. So that's pretty cool technology there. And then on the server side, we can see that we're just returning that response as a result. That gives us our data for our weather forecast. So we're just fulfilling that that gRPC contract with our server components. So it's a really interesting way of building applications in the future. It's definitely something that's worth investing some time and learning about. It's going to be a very fast way of transmitting data through a binary format from our application to our server. And then I've got one last demo here that we can just show real quick, and then I'll pass it back to you, Sam. I just want to show what Blazor is capable of. We had a question about is JavaScript still needed and that type of thing. This is a fully featured application that we can see that has authentication, lots of data grids and charts and graphs and CRUD operations. We can do file uploads and real-time conversions from Office documents to PDFs, all of those type of things in a very modern UI. We can change themes completely here. So I can switch from a dark theme to a light theme. I can auto detect the operating system theme settings and use those. I can set my language and do localization and globalization. So this is a really in-depth line of business style application here. And this is all built in Blazor. And there is literally about 30 lines of JavaScript in here. And all of that JavaScript is centered around changing the theme. And that is something that can be taken out now that .NET 5 is here. And that's what I'll be working on over the next few weeks, is removing that very little bit of JavaScript that is there. So this is something that you can build completely without JavaScript now and using .NET full stack. So this is really cool stuff that we're seeing from Blazor and WebAssembly. Back to you, Sam.
Yeah, very cool. Before we wrap up, let's do two questions because I think we got asked quite a bit. Where can folks get this code that Ed's showing that I'm going to show? Why don't we do this? We're going to push this up on our GitHubs, unless, I mean, most of it is already up, and then we'll email you post-webinar, and we'll likely put this up in a blog post so you can have all the code. And Ed, I'm going to let you chime in on something that I know you're going to love to answer. Steve Clark was asking, is Blazor another Silverlight? Is it here to stay? Or is it another ActiveX or Flash type thing?
So Blazor is here to stay, in my opinion. Blazor's getting a lot of investment from Microsoft. There's a lot of engineers that are working on making Blazor the next big thing. We know there's some talk about Blazor being worked into desktop scenarios and Blazor mobile bindings. So I think we'll see Blazor bleed into other ecosystems as well. So I feel like the programming model is strong and it's going to be around for quite some time. And the WebAssembly story is getting really nice. And as you can see, we can build line of business applications without any JavaScript. And it's a really nice developer experience and client experience as well.
Absolutely. So why don't I take over and we can talk through this. We'll let folks do one more quick poll here, please, just because we wrapped up talking about Blazor. So yeah, if you were to do a new ASP.NET project, what would you use? And while you're answering that, I agree with you. I think Blazor is going to show itself on so many different aspects. Folks were asking, like, can I use my Angular and React skills? And yes, I mean, it's a component model. A lot of things are very similar, but the implications of Blazor on desktop and mobile are pretty nice too. So, all right, let's show the results of this poll here. Let's see where all of you stand. Look at that. You're going to be a happy man. Yeah, a lot of Blazor fans. All good.
What's nice is if you're a Telerik, if you're a Telerik customer, then you have support no matter which one of those you choose. So if you're on the JavaScript side of things, you have Kendo UI, and if you're on the Blazor side or the MVC side, there's the Telerik UI for those as well.
Absolutely. All right, Ed, sit back. You've been talking quite fast and covered a lot of things. Let me talk about some of the other things that folks are asking about, okay? What happens to mobile? What's going on with desktop as well? So let's cover all of that, and I'm going to try to show you some more demos as well. Okay, mobile land, Xamarin, all right? Xamarin is the way we build cross-platform .NET apps, makes it real simple, truly native, truly cross-platform apps. You know the story. These are the two ways in which we build Xamarin apps. There's Xamarin iOS and Xamarin Android, right? And this is the plan to be bringing Xamarin into the .NET fold. So this will evolve to be .NET iOS and .NET for Android, right? And this all stays. You're writing shared C# and you're writing the heads separately. Xamarin Forms is something we all are a fan of because it's a shared UI layer as well. It's an abstraction, so you don't have to know much about iOS or Android, and you have some shared code. Now, this is mostly in C# and XAML right now. You can absolutely build your visual tree in C# if you want, but this is what is evolving, and there are some questions around it which I'll like to address. So before we go into what's next with Xamarin Forms, this is the present, and it's pretty darn good. This is Xamarin Forms 5. I think they're still working out some kinks, so it might still say preview for a couple of days, but it's all out. So you're talking brand new controls, and again, Microsoft is trying to step up, but there are gaps, and that's exactly where we come in. Hot reload is big. This is how we close the inner dev loop, so we can make some changes and see that working in our simulator or our phones right away. This was something they did last year, and they got a lot of feedback that it wasn't working for UWP and some other things. So they actually redid the whole thing. I can show you that really quick. The diff is much better, and now they actually share what WPF and UWP do, so it's the same exact Visual Studio experience, and you see the live visual tree. Hot restart is when you're building iOS apps on your Windows machine, and you plug it in, and it knows how to incrementally push out the build. It's a much quicker experience. Gradients, brushes, shell updates, customizations everywhere. So yeah, they're putting in a lot of love, and the whole team is very aware of all the issues that the developer community complains about, and they're trying to address all of it. So Xamarin Forms is in a good place. Now, what's next, right? And this is what we got super excited about with .NET MAUI. That's the evolution of Xamarin Forms, and this will support Mac, Windows, iOS, Android, and all the other things. And a lot of folks were asking, like, what happened to this? And nothing happened because it wasn't meant to be ready. This was for .NET 6. So .NET 5 is out, and along with it is Xamarin Forms 5.0. And they are setting it up so that we can do all the things that are promised in .NET MAUI. First task is to change how the renderers work in Xamarin Forms, make them all handlers so they can be used from cross-platform solutions. And then we can open up the funnel to do C# with MVU. We can do Blazor mobile, but the core engineering has to happen right now. And this is what Microsoft is going to do, and this is what we are going to do to make sure your Xamarin Forms apps can really flourish. Now, whether you call just the speed increments and redoing of the handlers .NET MAUI, or do you want to wait until you have Blazor and MVU officially to call it MAUI? That's just being discussed, but all of the things that we talked about, they're all happening for .NET 6. That's going to be the one .NET strategy. So Ed talked about the web going cross-platform with the runtime, the Mono and the BCL runtime. That's going to happen with Xamarin Forms next, okay? We are here to help. You obviously know about Telerik UI for Xamarin. Or maybe if you don't know, you really should take a look, and I'll show you a quick demo on where we are doing. This is a big suite of love from us. I love all things Xamarin, and so does the team. We have our product engineers here, and they pour in love every week to make sure your Xamarin iOS, Xamarin Android, and Xamarin Forms application have the best possible UI. You have a great experience on Windows and Mac. You have great starting experience with bringing in a NuGet package. We give you templates. It's a good place to be. So a lot of love being poured into UI for Xamarin. Now let's talk about Blazor one more time. It's not just for web, as we talked about the server side and the client side wasm. Blazor actually is going to make itself available for desktop and web and mobile as well. The desktop stuff, you don't want to do full-blown Electron because that's a little like heavy-handed with Node.js, and that's what they're working on with WebView 2. And for web, or I mean, for mobile, you can absolutely build a PWA. In fact, we wrote a full-blown PWA application with Blazor. You can install it on your desktop or your mobile application or mobile form factors, and it's beautiful. But that's using the web as a distribution model. If you wanted to go in the store and write a native app, that's when you look at Blazor mobile bindings. And again, that will be something you will be able to do in the next iteration of Xamarin Forms. So I'll show off that a little bit. And overall, yeah, this is the experimental Blazor bindings. Like you see, like we are taking all of the Blazor love, but you're still sitting on top of Xamarin Forms. So this is purely native play, and you are kind of looking ahead at where Xamarin Forms is going. We have probably 24 controls, no, probably 12 controls that are pure Xamarin Forms, but we have exposed them out as Blazor. And this is ongoing work, and it's beautiful. I'll show you the grid and other like complex controls that you can now render purely just by using a Blazor binding, and it's Xamarin Forms on the covers. So it is beautiful. We did put in quite a bit of work in like this year and the team, and this is something we are quite proud of. We don't want to give you just hello world apps to look at. We want to give you real world apps that you can look at. So iOS, Android, Windows, whatever device you have, you can pull up, do a search on Telerik. You can end up with 5 or 6 different apps. There are 4 real-world showcase applications that you can take a look at, and all of this code is actually open source on GitHub. So we wrote an ERP, we wrote a CRM, we wrote a to-do application and a tag it application to kind of tag your photos, be able to make them searchable. So all of that code is out there. It is using some Azure services. It is using Telerik UI, just to give you an example of what real-world apps look like. So all of that love is out there for you to look at. Okay, so that's with the Xamarin land. Again, a lot of things happening. A lot of things happening with Xamarin Forms 5, but the things that we were promised are coming next year, right? That's the whole MAUI promise, and you will have multiple ways of doing things, but we need to lay the foundation first, and that's where Microsoft is slowing down a little bit to do the right thing, and we're going to be right there with them. Let's talk about desktop, right? And I keep saying that desktop is amazing because that's what's running your enterprise businesses, your line of business applications. So what's going on with desktop? A lot of good things, right? This is where we stand right now, right? So we have WinForms, we have WPF. This is what we have had forever. We have UWP, which is also evolving, and then we have Windows UI. So you have a few choices to make, and it comes down to what exactly are you trying to build, right? For the full richness, you want WinForms, which is extremely productive. For the kind of customizations that a XAML layering stack will bring to have UI and touch support, you want to go with WPF. Or if you want to have your apps run on HoloLens or Surface Hub, then you look at UWP. And Windows UI or WinUI is kind of separating out that UI end-to-end from Windows updates, so they can push out the updates quickly. UWP is not dying, and this is a question we get a lot. WinUI essentially sits on top of UWP. It's a UI stack, right? And the goal is eventually Xamarin Forms will end up maybe using WinUI to reach the Windows desktop. So WinForms WPF, again, if you are running applications like this, we pour in a lot of love in our control suites, and it's an incredibly rich ecosystem to be in. You have great tools, you have very productive developers with all the latest in C#, and it runs on .NET 5 now. So what's not to like? You can have a single file application, you can have self-contained applications, and a lot of folks who are wanting the easy deployments with click once, that's what is back with .NET 5. And you have fairly easy migration paths, which I'll like to show you. So again, WPF and WinForms are very welcome, and it keeps you very productive, right? So we are here with UI for WPF and UI for WinForms. You know, these are big UI suites that give you 100+ controls each, and we are right there to kind of support you. So we already had things working with .NET Core 3.1, which is an LTS, and thanks Ed for pointing out LTS is long-time support. So we had it working there, and we have had it working on .NET 5 RCs, but now we have it fully baked in with .NET 5 being out and production ready. So we also want to make sure that what you're doing today is future-proof, right? So when you, for example, get WinForms or get WPF controls from us, when you look at the downloads and the binaries, we give you separate binaries for WPF for running on, or WinForms running on 4.8 and then 3.1 and then 5, right? So you get clear separate binaries, and it's very easy to swap out and migrate. And if you are looking to migrate, we got some questions like, if you are on .NET Framework, should you jump onto 3.1 or should you jump onto 5? And it depends. The jump is about the same. Between 3.1 and 5, it's not really much of a jump at all. It's about the same APIs. But if you're going from Framework, then you have a choice of going to an LTS version, or you can jump on the latest .NET 5. It's about the same. And we want to help you out a little bit with some project conversion tools that kind of solve out the DLLs. They use some of the tools from Microsoft, and they just make the migration a little easier. And this one's big because everyone's been asking about it. This is incredibly difficult, actually. I was talking to Olia Gavrish from Microsoft the other day, and keep in mind, Visual Studio on Windows is a .NET Framework application, and now you're running it on .NET Core and WinForms and WPF applications, and you're running it on .NET 5. So these are .NET Core and .NET 5 things, but your Visual Studio is still .NET Framework. So they had to do a lot of engineering to make this work, and we had worked with them from the get-go, and so your WinForms designers are back, and with it are all of your Telerik UI. And you don't have to do much, just get the NuGet package and we will light up all of our controls right in the designer, and drag and drop works just the way you expect it, okay? UWP, again, like I said, it's evolving. You have WinUI sitting on top of it, and everything is fine and happy. And we're actually catering quite a bit to the WinUI developers as well. If that's how you want to build modern Windows applications, that's how you should do it. So UWP, again, I'll take a couple of minutes here. We got about 24 or so controls. These are all open source, so you can light up all of your UWP applications this way. And then WinUI, we're excited about this because it's the brand new. This is the latest and most modern way of building Windows UI, and this is running on UWP right now, but eventually you'll have Win32 support. So you'll be able to take this UI and stretch it all the way back to WPF and WinForms whenever Microsoft is ready. And we will be ready. We had a dozen or so controls already. We started with the grid, and then we have charts and graphs, which is what we are good at. The gauges, it's all free now. So give it a spin. Tell us how you feel about WinUI. Okay, so I have 6 minutes left. Okay, let's do some quick demos, and then we'll do some Q&A. All right, so I'm going to go to Visual Studio here. This is VS for Mac, and what I'm trying to show you here is an app that is actually in stores. If you do a search on iOS or Android, search for Telerik, this is our Xamarin Forms application. That's an example. It's a full-blown application. So let me go ahead and run this, and you will see the things that I'm trying to show you. I'm going to start in debug mode, not just regular deployment. Now I'm on a Mac, so it knows there's Xcode, and it knows how to deploy it to my iOS simulators here, which is going to come up in just a second. This is our Xamarin sample app, like I said. We'll give it a second. Yes, and yes. And I mean, this is a full-blown app, so you can look at all the UI that we produce. You can look at some of the code that we use as well. Plus, this whole code is open source, and you can download our trial, and you would see the exact same code base that I'm looking at. If I'm here looking at a combo box, and I have the XAML pulled up here, so what you'll see here is if I come down here to the skills thing, which is this exact drop-down combo box, so I can do things here. Let's just do the very simple like background color. We'll do Alice blue, sure. And then I will just hit save, and you will notice that this thing has turned blue. It's instantaneous. That's the quick hot reload, right? And if I look at where things are, and this works with all of the Xamarin Forms baked-in controls, and it works with all of our Telerik UI for Xamarin as well. So if I go look at this, this is hidden somewhere down in your settings. So look in your properties. There is the XAML hot reload and XAML previewer and hot restart. This is what we had done before. Entire page was reloading because you changed some XAML. Now you can do change preview only. So only change do the diff on the visual tree and only change what has really changed in code. So this makes things much, much faster. You absolutely want to do that. And they're working on C# hot reload as well. So again, all of your Telerik UI works with the latest hot reload. So it's a good experience. Now let me show you one more thing here. I'm going to close this and bring up another application here. This is, again, something you can find in our Xamarin examples. This is an example called SDK browser. So the code is out there and it's open for you to look at. This one here, I'm going to quickly fire this up. Maybe not debug this time. It's going to look like any other app, but how we are doing it is completely different. It's a sample app, it's just a placeholder. So you see all of these controls here, the busy indicator. I can change the animation type. We have like a dozen or so of these controls built in, and it's all very easy. There's the data grid getting started. So it's just the data grid that you expect from a Xamarin application. It has filtering, sorting, grouping, all of that fun stuff. But what I'm trying to say is this entire thing is done in Blazor. This is Blazor Mobile. So if you look at my dependencies, which I'm sure it's too small for you to look at, and I can't zoom in quite easily. So this one is actually using Xamarin Forms and mobile Blazor bindings. So if you look at, for example, our busy indicator, this is actually using not Xamarin Forms XAML. This is actually Blazor syntax. And all of those things, like the data grid that I showed you, this, you see, this is Blazor, right? We have the code right here for any observables that we're binding to it. So use Blazor to write native mobile apps if that's what you want to do. All right, 3 more minutes to go, right? We got to go fast. All right, let's pull up Windows. Ed, you still here?
Indeed, Sam. While your Windows boots up there, I've got a good question that came through. With all of these desktop technologies, what are some of the client code differences between things like WPF and WinUI and Xamarin Forms?
It's actually not much. Okay, so that is a great question, and I'm going to pull up a sample project and walk you through this while we're talking. So it is XAML. Okay, it is XAML that you're looking at. You can actually share a lot of code. What is different are those annoying differences between WPF XAML and UWP XAML and Xamarin Forms XAML. It's not much. If you're a developer, you know how to swap out the namespaces, you know how to change it up, and you can share a lot of code. In fact, Xamarin Forms has renderers for WPF. I can take a Xamarin Forms application, I can render on WPF. I'm not saying that's how you build WPF apps, but you can share some code, snippets of your UI between different platforms. So yeah, great question. There are little differences, but it's all good. So I'm looking at a quick project here, and you will notice that in here in my project CS Proj, I have this thing called debug 50 or release 50. That 50 essentially means .NET 5, and it's running on .NET 5 Windows, right? So if I go ahead and run this, I will show you what this app does real quick. And this is a WPF application. Oh, I may have chosen to debug, so it's going to load up with a little more drama and yeah, setup. We'll give it a second. Okay, so this one here is the color theme generator. Okay, we have this application for WPF. It's beautiful. It comes with like 24 themes. This is WPF and WinForms. They both come with themes, and you can customize. So we give you all of these accent colors, so you can customize each and every part of the theme to make it your own. And we throw in some controls. This is a very heavy application. It has all of the UI that we build and Microsoft builds, and I can switch around the theme really quick. I can make it material, and you can see that everything changes, right? So this is a pretty heavy WPF application that we have, right? And within a couple of days, we were able to, that's the material design that's showing up. we were able to swap this out and make it run on .NET 5 without too much effort, right? So that's what I'm trying to tell you. It's there for you to use. And the way you do that, and I have, oh, we are almost at time, but give me 2 more minutes of your time here, please. And I can show you what that exact tooling looks like. So envision that you have a new project or an existing WPF or WinForms project, okay? I'm gonna let this spin up real quick. And let's begin with the Telerik WPF application here. Now this is gonna run on .NET Framework 4.7, right? I didn't pick the .NET Core one. So I'm going to go ahead and create, and it's going to use a template, a bunch of templates that we had. Let's just do an Outlook inspired application. So it's going to kind of look like Outlook because that's the theme that we are picking. And it's going to give you all of the UI that you want. Now envision this to be your full-blown enterprise WPF or your WinForms application, right? It's running for years and years and it's running your business. What do you do with it now? Do you have to migrate right now? The answer is no. If you don't have a need, then you're fine. Keep running on .NET Framework. But if you do want to use some of the newer APIs, if you do want that side-by-side loading and you want to self-contain your .NET runtime, then you do have to migrate to either .NET Core 3.1 or .NET 5. So once this spins up, you're going to see that we put all of our UI on it. And let's go ahead and run this real quick. And let's see, we'll give it a second. And what I'm going to try to show you, and I might not finish because it takes a couple of minutes because it's a big application. And come on, Visual Studio, it's trying.
While that's running, Sam, there was a question regarding upgrade checkers in .NET 5, and I believe there's already one available for .NET 5. There's also a checker for different platforms. So built into Visual Studio, actually.
We are using it, right? Yeah, we are using it. These checkers are built in, and the CLI tools. So you see that this is a Outlook-inspired application. So what you're talking about, Ed, it's right here. If I go into my extensions, if you go into Telerik, and then you look at UI for WPF, this right here is your .NET Core project converter. So you can take a .NET Framework application, move it over to .NET Core, or move it over to .NET 5. What we are using are two things. There is an API portability analyzer, and then there's a try convert tool, right? So we can go through this, and it's going to take a while maybe, but what it's going to do is replace, if you're using any Telerik bits, it's just going to swap them out with the .NET 5 or .NET Core versions. And if I go run this, it's going to tell you, here are some APIs that you're using that are Windows only, that belong in .NET Framework. They have not moved, and there are very few of them. If you're using like WCF, those things will not make it over. And we drop in an HTML file right here in your project to say, this is what's different, this is what you'll have to move by hand, but otherwise, here's your code. And we can do a backup of your code, or we can just, like, if you want to live on the edge, we can just take and swap over your solution, make it an SDK style project, and go with that. So, Ed, hopefully that answered the basics of what you were trying to ask. I know we are over time, so I want to go back to where we left off.
Folks are cheering you on, Sam. They said we're nerds. We can stay as long as we need to.
Oh, good, good. Well, we can answer questions for as long as we need to, but let's have you folks take one more poll because I think this is fun. So again, don't let people tell you that it's legacy if it's running your business, right? So if you did have a desktop framework application, would you migrate right now, or would you wait? And do you have difficulties in migration, or do you not see an immediate need? Okay. All right, going one, going twice, and going thrice, and done. Let's see where you all are at. Let's look at the poll results. Look at that. For almost 40% of you will migrate right away, sure. And this is a mixed bag. That's exactly what we expect it to be, right? So it's a mixed bag. Stay where you are if you're happy. If you want to move, then move. All right, so moving on to, let's see, PowerPoint. There you go. These are questions that have been asked already, so we don't need to spend a lot of time. Framework isn't dying, it's fine. Do you need to upgrade? Depends on what you're looking for. I don't trust open source stuff. I've heard this many times. Let's not get into this because, like, Microsoft is driving it, right? Nothing is being opened up to a point where you cannot depend on .NET. It's just absolutely fine. And LTS or not, that depends on you. Again, you can self-contain. The risk of having a platform-wide .NET framework is gone. This is .NET Core we are talking about in .NET 5. So depends on where you want to see. .NET 5 is new. and .NET Core 3.1 is LTS. .NET 6 will be LTS, so it depends. Web forms, if you're running web forms applications, again, you're going to be fine in .NET framework. But if you want to migrate, then look at MVC, look at Blazor. There's a lot of guidance, and Ed will tell you on moving web forms to Blazor. Silverlight, end of life is next year, October. So we actually did quite a bit of work on all the different strategies so you can reuse your code. So you're going to be in a happy place. Ed, do you want to chime in anything on this slide?
No, I think we're good, Sam.
Okay. All right. So let's do, I mean, we are done here with the core of what we wanted to show. Let's answer some questions here.
Yeah, we still have quite a few eyes and ears out there. Okay. So what type of questions do we have that we can answer real time here?
All right, let's look into the questions answer. I know there was a lot of questions, and our folks in the background, thank you to each one of you, and you've been answering questions all hour long. So, will MAUI work on desktop? Sarashwadia, yes, that's the goal. It'll work on Windows and it'll work on Mac. In fact, this is a great point. If you are on a Mac, like I am, Apple is putting in a lot of love in Apple, what's called macOS Big Sur, okay, SUR, and that has a thing called Catalyst. Catalyst is taking your iOS applications, running them on a Mac, because Apple has the same problem. Everybody wants to build for iOS, nobody wants to build for the Mac desktop, right? So there are multiple ways of getting your Xamarin Forms applications onto a Mac. You have Xamarin Forms renderers that work on a Mac, but better still, use Catalyst to get your apps on the on the Mac. So yes. Will MAUI
we had one about Web API and whether the .NET framework was still something that is useful for client-side development. So I think Blazor fits that role very well. Yeah. So Blazor is going to be your client-side framework if you're not writing those JavaScript libraries. But what's nice is you can still have that trade-off where if you want to use just Web APIs, you've got all of the Angular, React, and all of those things available to you. So now you have a choice, which is great to have. Also, there was a lot of questions around GitHub and are we providing our code samples on GitHub? There was a lot of things shown today. We'll probably have some sort of wrap-up blog post that we publish in the next day or so. We'll try to include all the source code that we showed and all the examples today. And then Sam, I know some of yours are actually in like the Windows store.
Yeah, so if you want to play around like with our WPF, WinForms, WinUI, and UWP controls, you don't have to do anything. You don't have to install anything. Just go look in the app stores, and we have sample apps that you can play around with. All of the UI lights up. You see the code right there. So yeah, it's a lot of stuff that it's already out there for you to look at and play with, and Ed and me will get all of our code up on GitHub if anything is missing. And Avi Venkatesh here is asking a $1 million question here about .NET Standard. We don't have the answer because again, I don't think Microsoft has the answer as well. This is all something we're talking about. Like with .NET 5, is there a need for .NET Standard? I still think it is because I mean it lets you share the code, but you're talking about I mean a point where your like Mono and BCL, .NET Core combined BCL is the standard, and then beyond that point, like you were asking, like beyond 2023, we may not have a need for it, but right now we do. So yeah. All right, so we are 8 minutes over here, which we knew. I mean, this is a lot of stuff we are covering in an hour. So we appreciate each and every one of you and the time that you're taking out of your day to come and hang out with us. We are all geeks and nerds, and we are excited about .NET Framework and the future in which it's going. This is all very, very exciting. This is all good. Now, one more thing, if you want to keep hanging out with us more, Ed and me are also on Twitch quite a bit. We live code, we share our pain, and you can see us struggle through, but that's the fun of it. So we have a channel called Code It Live on Twitch, and Ed's on Mondays and Wednesdays, is that right?
Yeah, Monday afternoon and Wednesday morning. And then Sam, you've got a couple of days as well, right?
Yep, I do. I'll try doing Mondays, Thursdays, and Fridays. So come and hang out with us. All right, you can see us live code a lot of things. A lot of times we are playing around with the latest .NET bits, and a lot of times we are trying to play around with our UI. So just come and hang out with us. Okay, so with that, folks, we don't want to keep you for too long. I know there were a lot of questions, so we are going to follow up with you. If you ask those questions on Twitter, we'll leave a breadcrumb trail. And if not, we'll try to answer as many of those things in a blog post, so we all have a place to go and learn about stuff. And I want to do a quick shout out to all of our folks who are in the back rooms answering questions all day, so thank you. Ed and me stand on the shoulder of giants with our engineering teams, and so thank you all. That's me and Eric one more time. That's our social handles. So if you need to get hold of us, please do. And that's it. So I think it's very exciting time. It's one of the best times to be a .NET developer with the cross-platform reach that we have, with our code sharing abilities that we have. So Microsoft is going full steam ahead with the whole One .NET and the unification story that you see first in .NET 5, and you can see that evolve in .NET 6 and onwards. And we are right there as your partner to give you the latest and greatest and have all of our UI. You look at ASP.NET, you look at desktop, you look at Xamarin, all of our stuff works on .NET 5. So that's the message you should take home, to say all of your tooling is right there. All of your ammunition is right there. Go build amazing apps, right?
Yeah. This is the most fun I've had building demo code in a long time. So I did the SignalR demo by just going to the docs.microsoft.com site and spinning that up, then added the Telerik grid to it, and it all just worked. It only took a few minutes. And then I reached out to James Newton King and got the gRPC demo from him and added the Telerik grid, and it just worked. It was a lot of fun, and the Blazing Coffee app has been an exciting thing to be building for quite some time. So that one's out on GitHub, and we'll share that all with you.
Absolutely. All right, folks. So I think that's it from us. Thank you all once again for staying with us for an hour. Hopefully this was fun and entertaining, and you got some things to take home. Go build amazing apps, as we would all like to. So that's it from us, and thank you. Thank you all, everyone.
Thanks. Bye-bye.